Hello class, this is your instructor Miss Birchfield, and in this mini lesson you're going to learn about factoring by grouping. Again, remember that factoring, what we're doing is undoing a polynomial. In this case, we're going to undo a polynomial that has 4 terms. The key to factoring is to determine how many terms you have, whether it's a binomial, a trinomial, or it has 4 terms, and then choose the method that goes with the number of terms that you have. We always will first check for GCS, whether they have one or not, but we always want to look for that first. If the terms or the polynomial does not have a GCS, then we use the method that goes along with how many terms we have. This case, we're going to have 4 terms, and we're going to use what's called grouping. To use grouping, what we do is we group the terms into 2 groups of 2. Then we factor out the GCF from each of the groups. So this time you're going to factor out each parentheses that you group will have a GCF. If there is a common binomial factor, then we factor it out. So your answer will have 2 binomials that are multiplied together. So when you look, the answers, your factors to these in grouping will have 2 binomials like this with either a plus or minus separated between it. So in these 2 examples, so what we're going to do, if you notice, x cubed, 3x squared, 2x, and 6, the only number they have in common is 1. Well, that doesn't help us break anything down. So what we're going to do is we're going to group the first 2 terms together, the second 2 terms together, and then I'm going to look at each of these terms. I'm going to take out a GCF. Well, the only thing common they have is an x squared. Remember from the GCF mini lesson that we divide x squared into each of these terms. I'm not going to write it this time, but x cubed divided by x squared gives us an x. And then 3x squared divided by x squared is just a plus 3. Now we'll look at the second group. 2x and 6, the common factor is going to be a plus 3. I'm bringing this sign down. And then I'm going to divide. So I'm going to have my parentheses, 2x, I'm sorry, I'm thinking when I'm factoring it, it's a plus 2 as our factor. So we're going to divide now, 2x divided by 2 is x, and then 6 divided by 2 is a positive 3. We still haven't got it to where it's all multiplication yet because I've got this plus here, so it's still addition. Now we'll look and notice that in the parentheses here, the x plus 3 and the x plus 3 are common in both of those terms. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to write, since it's a common, then x plus 3 is a GCF. Once we remove these x plus 3s, what is left? Well, what's in front, the x squared and the 2, will go into your second parentheses. So now we have the 2 binomials. It's easy to check because all you have to do is FOIL out and get the same thing that you started with at the original. I'm not going to do that to save time, but on your paper, if you want to check it, then pull it out and make sure to check it. So look at the second example. I'm looking at all of the terms. There's 4 terms. So remember what we said with 4 terms. We're going to look. Notice there's no GCF other than 1. So what we've got to do is we're going to use grouping in order to group smaller terms, or instead of having 4 terms, we're going to group it into 2 terms. The first group here, the 2x squared and the 6x, the common factor, we're going to have a 2 that's common, and they both have x's. The smaller is going to have, it's just an x, and notice that the second term only has a y. So what I'm going to do is start a parentheses. 2x squared divided by 2x is x. And then negative 6xy divided by 2x will give us a negative 3. The x's will go away, and I'll have my y. Here in the second group, the negative 5x and 15y, we're going to have 5 as a common factor, but what I'm going to do is I'm bringing down a negative. So it's going to be a negative 5. This first term only has an x, the second term only has a y, so it's just the negative 5 in front. When we divide, I will show you this. Be careful with signs. When I divide, I'm dividing by negative 5. Well, negative 5x divided by negative 5 is positive x, and then 15y divided by negative 5, positive divided by negative is going to be a negative 3y. What we want to make sure that these two parentheses here are the same, because that is our GCF, or because it's common to both terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it one time, and then the second parentheses is going to have what's in front. So we're going to write a 2x minus 5. Again, you can check it by folding it out or distributing it out and making sure it matches what's up here. Here we've got two more problems, and there's no GCF, so what we're going to do, since there's 4 terms, we're going to group the terms together. From this first group, we're going to take out a 3, because 3 is a common factor, and we have x squared and an x, so they both have an x in common. When we divide 3x squared divided by 3x, we're left with an x. And then when we divide 12x by the 3x, we're going to get 4, and the x's go away. I'm going to bring my plus down from here, and I'm going to look at each term. 4 and 16, 4 is the common factor, the largest. I've got an x here, but I don't have an x here, so we're not going to have an x as a GCF, but they do both have this y, so I'm going to write a y with my GCF, and I'm going to put a parentheses. When we divide, 4xy divided by 4y will just leave us an x. 16y divided by 4y will just give us 4. Remember what we were talking about. We want this parentheses, that binomial, to be the same. So we're going to write it one time because it's the GCF for both terms. And then the second parentheses will have what's in front, which is 3x plus 4y. And then you're done. Here, the last example, there's no GCF, so we're going to group them into 2 groups of 2. Our GCF in the first group, it looks like it's going to be 2, and they both have an A. So we're going to take out a 2A and write a parentheses, and then we're going to divide. 6AB divided by 2A will be 3B. And then negative 2A divided by 2A will just be a negative 1, because remember, anything divided by itself is always 1. From the second group, I'm going to bring the minus down. And it looks like 3 is the common factor, so we're going to have a negative 3. I'm going to put a parentheses, and then I'm going to divide. And I'll write it under here so you can see negative 9b divided by negative 3 will be a positive 3b. And then 3 divided by negative 3 will be a negative 1. These match now. So we're going to write 3b minus 1, since it's the GCF. And then we now, in the second parentheses, remember we put what's in front, which is 2a minus 3. Thank you for listening to this mini lesson. If you have questions, just let me know.